4 years, hundreds of miles, 13,000 dead. And at the end of it all, starving Crusaders roast human flesh on their spears over open fires in the Syrian winter of 1098. This is not myth. This happened. At Ma'ara, a fortified city in the Levant, Christian warriors, blinded by hunger, hardened by war, turn on the very rules of civilization they claimed to defend. They tear human limbs from bodies, not of beasts, but of men, and they eat them. And the question that echoes across centuries is not just why, but how. How does a holy war become an abattoir of faith and humanity? How does the sword of God become the blade of hell? This is the story of that descent, one of bone, fire, and betrayal. You think you know the Crusades. You do not know Ma'ara.
It begins with heat. August 1096. Europe is cracking under drought, famine, and feudal greed. The air above the fields of France shimmers like blistering metal. In this desperate world, a call pierces the filth and hunger, a thunderous cry from Pope Urban II, summoning warriors of Christ to liberate Jerusalem from Muslim rule. The image is righteous, holy lands purified, sins redeemed in blood. But the truth, even now, is murkier. Not one crusade, but many. Not one army, but swarming tides of nobles, criminals, and peasants, some devout, others driven by coin or vengeance. Among them marches Raymond of Saint-Gilles, hardened Count of Toulouse, tall and stone-faced, his mind carved by siege warfare and scripture. And near him, a man who will one day walk into hell with open eyes. Bohemond of Taranto, Norman warlord, cunning and brutal, who sees in the crusade not salvation, but a throne. As they march east through dust-choked plains and bloodied trails, the illusion of holy glory breaks down step by step. Splintered Crusader factions fracture further, squabbling over provisions and pride. Disease dogs their heels. Corpses rot unburied in the roadside sun. By the time they stagger into Antioch in October 1097, they are less army than fever dream, a collage of ragged banners and blistered feet. But here, strategy ignites. Bohemond wants the city. He sees in its walls more than stronghold. He sees legacy. Raymond sees redemption, or at least the illusion of it. Their uneasy alliance holds as they lay siege. For 8 brutal months, the Crusaders starve, eat leather, even rats. Snow falls. Men die. But from within, a breach. Bohemond bribes an Armenian tower guard. A gate opens silently in the night. Steel pours in. Antioch falls. And the Crusaders, battered but blood-weary, believe perhaps their suffering is sanctified. But even before the corpses are cold, a Muslim relief army descends. The besiegers become the besieged. Trapped behind the very walls they conquered, they eat their horses. They boil bones. And they begin to whisper about what comes next if no rescue arrives.
Bohemond, ever the tactician, knows faith alone won't fill empty bellies. He convenes a war council in the crumbling halls of Antioch. Snow clings to his fur-trimmed cloak as he pins a torn map against splintered wood. Raymond stands across from him, eyes sunken, lips bluish with cold. Between them, silence thick as frost. Outside, muscle and morale wither together. Bohemond proposes a desperate gamble, a breakout. Strike before starvation devours them from the inside. But even that requires strength they no longer have. Men faint during drills. Fingers tremble too much to string bows. One night, coughs blood into his palm, then licks it reflexively. Meanwhile, Yagisian's successors regroup miles away, rallying new banners, waiting for the Crusaders to starve themselves into submission. And still, the whispers grow, low at first, like the hum of flies, but they thicken near the cook fires. They slither through tents and prayer circles alike. What if meat could be found somewhere else? What if God would understand?
Maera rises ahead like a prize and a curse. December 1098. The Crusaders move south from Antioch, skeletal shadows of the men they were. Their boots slide across frost-bitten mud, breath fogs the dusk, and every mile is more hallucination than victory. The city is well defended, with high stone walls and a garrison of Arab soldiers who know the land, the weather, the terrain. And yet the Crusaders come anyway. Driven less by piety now than by hunger sharpened to madness. Among them walks Bohemond, hunched beneath the weight of wet iron and ambition. He sees Maera not as fortress, but as meat, strategic, tactical, literal. Raymond scoffs at him, calls it foolish, even blasphemous. But he still marches. They all march, because behind them is snow and death, and ahead, maybe, food. The siege begins. Arrows sing, oil boils. A crusader screams as molten tar explodes his face, but the line presses forward. When a breach finally cracks the wall, it is like blood from dried lips. They surge, swords on throats, fire in homes. The defenders fall one by one, some slain, others captured. Maera is taken. But there is no relief. No discovery of stores, no silos of grain, just silence. Just a cold wind blowing over empty cellars. The hunger does not end. It deepens. And then, some say, the butchery begins. There are screams in the night, not of dying, but of carving. In the ruined courtyards of Maera, fires flicker low, casting shadows on blood-washed stone. Crusaders crouch around limbs, prying flesh from bone. Some are butchered methodically like pigs. Others are torn in blind frenzy. Witnesses later say that children's ribs were cracked open for marrow, that thighs blackened in soot turned spit over embers where bread should be. Chroniclers write in stunned Latin, struggling for words that no psalm can sanctify. They roasted the bodies of the Saracens, cooking them to eat. There is no metaphor here. This is no allegory. This is Christian knights, laureled with crosses, making meals of their fallen foes. Not all partake. Raymond recoils, rallying what remains of dignity to bury captives rather than stew them. But Bohemond does not stop it. Perhaps he even starts it. The lines between necessity and cruelty blur until they vanish, smeared in fat and ash. And for the first time in their bloody pilgrimage, the Crusaders are feared not as soldiers, but as something older, something primal, something monstrous. Word spreads faster than any sword, across Syria, across the Islamic world. Not just that the Franks have taken cities, but that they devour flesh. What army marches against men who have become wolves? Miles away in Damascus, the stories hit like plague. Emir Dukak listens in disbelief as shaken couriers recount the horrors at Maera. He paces through his marble halls, the scent of rosewater failing to cover the stench of panic. His advisors argue. Some demand vengeance, others plead for caution. But Dukak knows this is more than a military threat. It is a rupture in the moral fabric of war itself. Honor no longer governs the battlefield. Civilization teeters. And yet, even as he plans retaliation, a darker shift unfolds. Across the Levant, Muslim soldiers begin to leave cities undefended. Villagers flee at the mere sight of a Frankish banner. The campaign of God has mutated into nightmare. Bohemond, his beard crusted with frost and smoke, surveys Ma'ara's broken skyline with deadened eyes. He has won nothing but silence. And in that silence, something has stared back at him from within the flames, a revelation too awful to name. Nights, once promised paradise, now struggle to sleep without sobbing. At night, Raymond stares at the charred earth where men once prayed and wonders if God has turned his face away. Ma'ara is not remembered for victory. It is remembered for hunger's triumph over faith, for the day the cross and the fang became one. And no matter how many kingdoms fall or rise, that smoke never clears completely. It lingers in every myth of holy war, in every whisper of what men become when they believe God will forgive anything.
Centuries later, even as steel forges into rifles and crusader creeds dissolve into textbooks, the scars of Ma'ara do not fade. In dusty corners of Syrian folklore, grandmothers still warn children not of devils, but of pale riders who eat the dead. Military historians debate logistics, theology students argue doctrine, but none can wash away the singular horror. Men anointed by the church, turning hunger into heresy. The Crusaders reached Jerusalem in the summer of 1099. They knelt at the Holy Sepulchre. They wept. They bled again. But there too, they slaughtered. What lingered was not salvation, but the question left rotting at Ma'ara. If the righteous can consume the flesh of their enemies, what is left to fear or to save? One crusader, writing home years later, does not ask for glory. He asks for forgiveness. He dreams, he writes, of one frozen night when bones cracked in his mouth like branches. That sound rings louder than any hymn, and it never, ever stops. And yet, even with centuries between then and now, the specter of Ma'ara keeps rising. In wartime propaganda, in theological debates, in whispered justifications for unspeakable acts. Each time a soldier strips mercy from his heart in the name of righteousness, Ma'ara flickers behind his eyes. Each time a warplane drops fire on a mosque or market, someone remembers the smoke curling from cookfires over dead men's torsos. The city's name is not just a grave, it is a mirror, and what it reflects is not unique to the 12th century. It's the eternal danger that when hunger, belief, and power align, humanity becomes negotiable. The Crusaders thought themselves chosen, but on that frozen Syrian plain, under a sky too quiet for the living, they chose to become something else. Across language, across religion, across time, Ma'ara still asks the same question with blistering urgency. When we believe God is with us, what won't we do? There is no comforting answer, only the echo of bone breaking in a soldier's mouth, the flicker of fire against ruined stone, and the long, slow scream of history, refusing to forget. From the ashes of Ma'ara, a legend is born, not of victory, but of fracture. The crusade limps on, but the unity it once claimed shatters like glass underfoot. Soldiers desert, alliances sour. Bohemond secures Antioch for himself, crowning ambition with betrayal. Raymond storms out, cursing the corruption of what was meant to be a holy brotherhood. And yet, the march continues, staggering toward Jerusalem like the last breath of a dying oath. They take the city. The streets run red. But the soul of the crusade, whatever it was, lies buried under Ma'ara's frozen earth. In every chapter that follows, in the Reconquista, in colonial conquest, in wars waged with sacred banners, the memory surfaces. Not as scripture, as warning. Because Ma'ara burned not only houses or bodies, but illusions. That brutality can stay holy. That faith can stay clean. In the silence after slaughter, as snowfall covers emptied homes, one truth remains. When flesh becomes theology, no one leaves untouched. Not the victors, not the dead, not even God. Even now, Ma'ara breathes. Beneath the shifting politics of the modern Levant, beneath refugee camps and rebel outposts, the bones of those December days still rest in the soil. Archaeologists tread softly there. Tourists do not come. The ancient stones remember what the world would rather forget. And in moments of quiet, under skies bruised by dusk, some say you can still hear it. That faint crackle of fire, the rustle of armor, the hiss of fat on flame. As if the ghosts have not forgiven what was done in their name. As if they never will. This is not only history. It is inheritance. The legacy of Ma'ara is not just that men may eat one another. It is that they might find reason to call it sacred. That is the horror. That is the warning. Not the feast. The prayer said before it. So when we ask, centuries on, what Ma'ara meant, when we dig through burnt chronicles and blood-slicked stone, we are not only chasing a moment of atrocity, we are peeling back the mask of civilization itself. Empires have long wrapped conquest in holy words, but Ma'ara exposes the stripped core, that when piety is starved and allegiance stretched to the snapping point, even the most sanctified men can grind bones between their teeth. This story does not end with absolution. There is no last-minute redemption or angelic intervention. Just the cold breath of winter slipping through broken gates, the snapping of twigs that might be ribs, and a silence so deep it swallows even memory. Somewhere, a torch flickers against flesh. Somewhere, an oath turns into hunger. And history, watching from the shadows, dares to write it down. Because Ma'ara is not merely an ancient tragedy, it is a prophecy. Not of divine revelation, but of human repetition. Every age finds its pretext. Every empire carves its justifications. And when war stretches long, when supply lines choke and ideals rot in the sun, the mask slips again. You saw it in the trenches of Verdun, in the famines of Leningrad, in deserts lit by drone fire and prayers. Men turning monstrous not out of hatred, but need wrapped in conviction. So we return to that Syrian winter, again and again, not to condemn these Crusaders alone, but to face the truth they uncovered about us. That when belief starves alongside the body, it mutates. That the road to Jerusalem was always paved with ash, not gold. And that in the quiet after the fire, when the meat is gone but guilt remains, what lingers is the question we cannot silence. If we think God wills it, what won't we justify? In the end, it was not the siege or the slaughter that shook the world. It was the sound of prayer rising over bone-fed flames, a sound too human to forget and too dangerous to dismiss. So the name Ma'ara endures, not carved proudly into monuments, but whispered in places where war distorts scripture and hunger mutates into doctrine. It endures in the tremble of a soldier's hand before he pulls a trigger, in the silence of a commander weighing morals against survival, in the child's bedtime myth that hides a warning too ancient to forget. This is not only the history of a siege, it is the anatomy of belief unraveling. What happened at Ma'ara was not an aberration. It was a revelation of how easily righteousness can become ruin, of how even the brightest banners cast shadows when waved from starving hands. And when the world next asks whether something sacred can excuse something savage, Ma'ara answers not with a verse, but with a flame. Not with absolution, but with flesh. Because once, on a cold December night, holy men knelt not in prayer, but in hunger. And from that moment onward, no war fought in God's name would ever be clean again. In Ma'ara's final breath, the horror does not vanish. It burrows into scrolls and sermons, into nightmares and nation-building myths, into the marrow of human history, where faith and fear still war for dominion. What transpired in those ruined streets is not confined to ancient stone or medieval sin. It breathes in every doctrine that demands sacrifice, every flag raised higher than a human soul. And though the winter has long melted and the flesh long turned to dust, the choice made there remains. Before Ma'ara, men believed divinity made them better. After, we learned it can make us worse. So remember the heatless fires. Remember the bones. Remember the silence that followed, louder than any battle cry. Because that is where Ma'ara still lives. In the pause before cruelty. In the whisper handed down, generation by trembling generation, asking not only what happened, but what happens next when we forget. Ma'ara does not end in books. It walks beside us still, in the euphemisms of political speeches, in the redacted truths of military briefings, in the quiet moments before a drone strike or a raid approved with folded hands and grave expressions. It is the echo in the chamber where holy intent meets human appetite, a footnote turned omen. And for every future generation that inherits both scripture and sword, the choice remains: to look away from that flame-fed courtyard and pretend we have evolved, or to look into it and admit the darkness it revealed was not born in that winter, but in us. There, in frozen ash and silence, is the truth Ma'ara left behind. Not that men once ate their enemies, but that someday, somewhere, they might believe they're meant to again. So let the name remain, not sanctified, not celebrated, but remembered. Not to glorify the fire, but to fear it. Because in the end, Ma'ara is not a place. It is a mirror we carry into every war, every vow of righteousness sharpened into blades. It is what stares back when we strip away armor and chant and discover what lies beneath. Hunger, belief, and the lie that one can cleanse the other. When Crusaders ate their enemies, they did more than shatter the laws of man or God. They proved how thin those laws truly are, how easily they melt in the crucible of need. And so we whisper Ma'ara, not as a story, but as a warning. Not because it happened once, but because it can happen again. And because somewhere, in the ashes of some future silence, the flame waits. So we end where we began, not with triumph, but with a question. Not with saints or saviors, but with shadows. Ma'ara is not the exception, it is the example. A flare in history's night sky reminding us how thin the veneer of civilization truly is when cloaked in certainty and starved of doubt. No hymn can unring the cries that came from that courtyard. No creed can erase the ash from the mouths that spoke it. And perhaps that is the final horror. Not that it happened, but that it made sense to those who lived it. So let Ma'ara be a name unburied, a flame that refuses to die. Because when we tell its story, when we speak its name, we do not just remember the past. We hold ourselves accountable for the future. And in that cold, still breath after fire, that is all we can truly hope for.
Walk softly around the name Ma'ara. Do not let it slip too easily between syllables. Do not let it sit unnoticed beside other towns, other tragedies, as though its meaning has dulled with time. Because somewhere, someone will try again, to raise a banner in righteousness, to let desperation sharpen into justification. And when they do, Ma'ara is the shadow under their feet. The past is not prologue. It is permission, if forgotten. So speak it aloud. Let the bones shake. Let the embers stir. And as we peer forward into an uncertain future, crowded with clenched fists and sacred scripts, let Ma'ara stand, not just as memory, but as warning, bright and brutal, that what lies beneath every crusade is not grace, but hunger, and the terrifying belief that eating your enemy might bring you closer to God.
And so we close the gate, not to keep Ma'ara out, but to hold in what it revealed. Let it echo not as a tale of ancient horror, but as a flare warning us of what belief unmoored from mercy becomes. Crusaders devoured bodies in the name of salvation, yes, but in doing so, they devoured the illusion that piety alone protects us from becoming monsters. Ma'ara is not merely a cautionary tale. It is a reckoning. And its final message, older than religion and sharper than steel, is this: hunger does not ask for permission, and faith without doubt is fire without boundary. Speak the name, tremble if you must, and let its memory keep us watchful. For every age meets its winter, and every winter has its flame. Let that flame be seen clearly, without the fog of glory or myth. Let it burn in classrooms and cathedrals, in strategy briefings and bedtime stories. Because the tale of Ma'ara is not locked in the 12th century. It walks beside us, silent and flickering, each time we wield belief like a blade. Crusaders once knelt before altars, then made ovens of their enemies. And that transformation from prayer to pyre, from sanctity to savagery, will echo forever unless we learn to trace its path. So carry Ma'ara not as curse nor legend, but as compass, a reminder that civilization is not what we claim, but what we choose when the cold sets in, when the hunger bites, when our gods go silent. In that moment, may we remember this name. May we choose better. And if we do not, may we at least be honest enough to call the fire by its name. So this is the fire we inherit. Not an ancient flame, but a living one. Not locked in parchment, but kindled each time power cloaks itself in purity, each time hunger is dressed in holiness. Ma'ara is the ghost behind every necessary evil, the whisper behind every brutal order given in the name of higher good. Let no one say they were not warned. Let no one call it unthinkable. Because once, in a city ringed with frost and prayer, the unthinkable became survival, and salvation fed on flesh. The bones still rest there, not just in the dirt beneath Syria, but in the brittle spaces between belief and brutality. And if we forget them, If we file down Ma'ara's edge into soft myth or quiet shame, then one day, somewhere, the fire will flicker again. Only this time, it may not go out. So name it. Remember it, not for penance, not for pride, but so that when the cold comes again and war knocks once more in the name of the divine, we might finally answer, not with hunger, not with fire, but with the courage to say, no.
We end not with absolution, but with that single searing truth. The holiest wars can become the darkest mirrors. Ma'ara showed us what happens when righteousness forgets restraint, when faith forgets its own humanity. And those centuries stand between their frozen nightmare and our fragile present. We are not immune. We still burn. We still believe. And we still risk becoming what we forget. So speak the name not to condemn the past, but to guard the future. Let Ma'ara be the ember that survives every winter, not because men once ate their enemies, but because they were certain they had the right to. That certainty, that flame, is what must be watched forever. So now, when you hear the name Ma'ara, do not flinch, but do not turn away either. Let it haunt, not to paralyze, but to steel us against forgetting. Let it remind us of what war is when it stops pretending to be just, because it was never only about Jerusalem or territory or faith. It was about the line we swore we'd never cross, then crossed anyway, with hymns on our lips and blood on our hands. That line is still there, thin as breath, waiting, and Ma'ara stands beside it, not as myth or metaphor, but as memory, carved into earth and flame, not dead, not past, just watching, waiting for us to choose.